Hello, BookTube! Last week, one of my friends and I were riding in the car, and I said, whoosh, and she said, hello, BookTube! So I think that this whole BookTube thing's kind of catching on. I am talking today about one of the mysteries of Bookworms, and that is how we end up with two copies of the same book, and why we want to keep both copies. I know that my cousin first introduced me to this idea. She was like, here's my nice copy of Peter Pan, and here's the one I read. And I was like, what? Like, just pick one and stick with it. Like, either read the pretty copy or just keep the one that you read because that's the one you actually use. Anyway, it was really interesting to see her and how she has like decluttered certain books. She's handed down to me a lot of her old books that she ended up having two copies of. So I have like a lot of her nicer editions of books that she didn't read as much, and just some books that she had two copies of, and then I ended up with two copies of the same book. So you might be wondering, why would Bookworms keep both copies? So hopefully this will explain that question and how we ended up with two copies in the first place. I have several examples here. Actually, I have more examples here than I thought I would. And these are all books that I personally own. I have 5 books that I have 2 copies of. And there are other books that like my mom has or my brother has, and I have a copy too. But that's just because we need our own separate copies. We definitely consider those like, those are your books and these are my books. So these are ones that I personally own 2 copies of. Okay, first up is Agatha Christie's Death on the Nile. And I watched the movie before I read the book, but I was just getting into Agatha Christie and I'd read several of her other books, and I was like, oh look, here's a movie and it has some of my favorite actors in it. So I watched the Death on the Nile movie, and it was pretty good, and I was like, oh, now I should go back and read the book. And that was almost 2 years ago now. That was August of 2015 that I watched that movie, because I remember, because I was getting my wisdom teeth out. Anyway, Death on the Nile is a great mystery, and I already know who done it, but I'm really eager to read the book. So I got this one through Paperback Swap. I just told Paperback Swap I would like a copy of Death on the Nile, and this is what one of the members of that community posted and got sent to me. And so I accepted it, but when you're on Paperback Swap, it's really hard to tell like what the cover is. Sometimes people post things and it's the exact same cover. Sometimes they get the covers mixed up, but Paperback Swap isn't specific about which cover it is that you're posting, so you never know which cover you're getting either. So I decided that, okay, this is great, I can read this one, but I also want it to match all my other ones, my other Agatha Christie's, because they're all like the same size and shape, and I really like that set. So I thought, oh, so it's the brand Harper Mysteries, so I'll get this one through Paperback Swap, and I put a note and said, hey, make sure it's the Harper edition or whatever, but it's still not the same, it's like got the same signature, but it doesn't have the same spine and same cover, and it's a different size than the other Agatha Christie, so I still don't know which one I'm going to keep and which one I'm going to read. I haven't read it yet, but there are 2 copies of this book, and I have to decide which one to read, which one to keep, and I know I can always give one away if I really enjoy it and decide to share it. Secondly, I have Wuthering Heights. I've never purchased a copy of Wuthering Heights. This one was given to me by my cousin who I was telling you about earlier. She had 2 copies of Wuthering Heights, so she gave me this one. This is the copy I read recently, and then I also got this one from a friend, and it is gorgeous, and there's no way I'm getting rid of it. But this one's like all old and faded, and so like they're so pretty, but they're gonna be like in the different sections on my shelf. I'll show you in a minute. I rearranged my shelf this week to get it in rainbow order again, so they're technically in different spots on my shelf. Elsie's Endless Wait, or the Elsie Dinsmore book. I have had this A Life of Faith book for a very, very, very long time, like probably since I was 8 years old. It was the first one I ever got, and it got me hooked on this series. It has like 40 books, and I'm rereading it currently, but while my mom was helping someone declutter, she found the unabridged edition of probably the first book, and I can't wait to read this one either. So I'm keeping both Elsie's because one is very pretty and old, and the other one matches the other 7 books in the series, and I want to be able to have a complete series. Okay, I also have 2 copies of The Giver, and yes, they have identical covers, so you're probably like, Madeline, why do you have 2 books with the identical covers? Well, look at this. One of them is a hardback, and one of them is paperback. I actually got the paperback one, I think I got it through Paperback Swap first. I got this one first, and I was like, oh, this is awesome. You know, I have this copy of this book now, and I do prefer to read paperbacks. No, that's not how it went. I got this one at Target for $7, and I was like, I can spend $7 on my favorite book. And then this one was a hardcover, and it was through Paperback Swap, so I only had to pay 50 cents for a hardcover of the same book. And I was thinking, I'll probably get the rest of the series in hardcover anyway, so I should have the first one in hardcover. So now I have both. This one sits on my shelf, that one sits on my shelf, but I'll probably read the paperback one when I get around to rereading that series. I also have 2 copies of Pride and Prejudice. Weirdly enough, neither of these match the other Jane Austen books that I have. They're not the, I think it's Penguin Classics. This is the Gramercy Classics edition, sorry, that my mom got me when I turned 11. And this is the one that I've read 3 times. Yeah, I've read this same book 3 times. And this is an illustrated edition that I got for Christmas. And I can't wait to read it because it's like a great coffee table book, and I'll probably keep it for the rest of my life because it's so pretty, and it's got awesome illustrations, and I've never had an illustrated Pride and Prejudice. My mom also has a copy of Pride and Prejudice that actually fits with the rest of my collection of Jane Austen, and I might steal it one day, or I will just buy another copy of Pride and Prejudice and have 3 so that I have one that matches my others. That sounds ridiculous, I know, but that is some of the reasoning behind keeping 2 copies of the same book. I hope you enjoyed and understand why bookworms do one of the weird things that we do. And don't forget, the book was better.